7 castaways, 1 myth. Today we're looking at the medical reality of deep sea survival. I'm going to break down how one man survived over 100 days adrift when his organs should have failed. I'll tear apart the famous tall tale of the man swallowed by a whale and explain the brutal physiological reality of how your body would actually react inside one. And at the end, because I'm going to show you a medically accurate reconstruction of what the ultimate myth, Odysseus, would actually look like after 10 years at sea. I'm Dr. Sam, the Reconstructor. Jose Alvarenga, 438 days lost at sea. When rescued, he was reportedly drinking turtle blood, and eating raw seabirds and fish. Let me tell you what that did to his body. Let's go system by system. The skin. He would suffer from extreme UV damage, have ulcerations on his skin, sun poisoning, dehydration. Next, let's look at his kidneys. Severe stress, mostly from the dehydration and unfiltered proteins and abnormal foods that he would be taking in. Moving on to his liver, he would be suffering from parasitic infections from the raw meat consumption. Additionally, throughout his body, he'd have extreme muscle atrophy from the lack of nutrition, dehydration, and other effects of being at sea. Muscles were so atrophied that he could barely walk when he was rescued. Next, his mental status. He was having dissociative episodes and hallucinations once he was rescued. His rehab took over a full year. He is the most famous case, but he's not the most impressive. You cannot drink salt water. It will kill you faster than the dehydration alone. But this next survivor did the impossible. Poon Lim, 1942, 133 days on an 8-foot life raft. And he walked off the raft on his own 2 feet. That's not supposed to be possible. How did Lim survive? He caught fish with hooks, bent from tin can lids. He drank rainwater that he had collected in the canvas. And he rationed out 500 calories per day for 133 days. How does this compare to Alvarenga's journey? Alvarenga could not walk when he was rescued, but Poon Lim was able to walk off on his own 2 feet. Lim was younger, had a more structured day, and planned for his survival. He had a different mindset, different body type, and some supplies to begin his journey. His mental resilience was a key factor and allowed him to recover and have an easier survival. Most of us require 1,800 calories per day, just to give you an idea. He walked off his raft. That is medically almost impossible, but he did it. And I'll show you why at the end of this video. The next survivor is a case that most World War survivors still can't talk about. Luis Zamperini, 1943, 47 days on a raft in the Pacific after his bomber crashed. Then 2 years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, and he survived both. Zamperini was an Olympic runner before the war. He had elite muscle mass, which gave him a metabolic reserve most castaways don't have. He was a crew of 3, shrunk down to 2 when 1 died. They have a higher metabolic reserve and can tolerate more stress. The prisoner of war camp compounded everything, causing him chronic pain, post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury from damage, but he lived to be 97 years old, medically remarkable at every stage. He was an Olympic athlete. That is why his body outlasted the ocean. Most people do not get that luxury. This next one is a story that every American Navy sailor knows. Edgar Harrell, July 1945, USS Indianapolis. 4.5 days in shark-infested water. 900 men went in, 316 came out. This went down as the worst shark attack in recorded history. blood, thrashing, sounds triggering shark feeding frenzies, salt-induced kidney failure, hyperthermia. The delirium drove men to drink seawater. The medical literature shows that the dehydration killed more men than the sharks. The rescue was accidental, and the Navy did not even know they were messing for 4 days. The sharks did not kill most of them, dehydration did. But the sharks just made it faster. This next one sounds like a movie until you realize it was real. Harrison Okene. 2013, trapped in an air pocket at the bottom of the ocean for 60 hours. And he came out alive, barely. 100 feet down in a bathroom-sized air pocket, breathing his own CO2 for 60 hours. He could not swim out because of the decompression sickness that would have killed him. And it took a diving bell rescue 3 days to save him. He required 3 days in a decompression chamber to recover. So, the fact that he survived this unbelievable period of time is a miracle. Every breath he took made the next breath more dangerous. That is what CO2 poisoning is. And this is a survival story you actually did see in a movie. Michael Packard. June 2021, Cape Cod. He was swallowed by a humpback whale. Or was he? The whale did not actually swallow him. Humpback throats are too small for a human. Packard was just stuck in the whale's mouth and didn't make it down into his stomach. The pressure alone would have crushed his ribs if the whale had dived. Soft tissue injuries and no fractures, surprisingly. The Jonah myth is not what happened here. This is medically unprecedented and probably will never happen again. The whale did not swallow him, it spat him out. Thankfully, because his body could not have survived being swallowed for more than a minute. And I'll show you why at the end. If you were stranded at sea tomorrow, here's the order in which your body would start to break down. The first 72 hours, dehydration starts to set in and is the biggest problem. Days 4 to 7, acute kidney injury. Weeks 2 to 3, severe muscle wasting begins. Month 1, hallucinations and cognitive decline. Months 2 to 3, your body starts to eat away its own muscle. And then beyond month 3, you either die or evolve. Alvarenga hit that transition, and that's why he made it. Your body will keep you alive longer than you think, but your mind decides when you are done. Which brings us to the end of our countdown and the 3 answers I promised you at the beginning. The survivor countdown. First, the castaway who did the impossible, Poon Lim, spent 133 days on an 8-foot raft and walked off it on his own 2 feet. Alvarenga went 438 days and could not stand up when rescued. So, why did the man who spent 1/3 of the time recover better? And why didn't his kidneys shut down? It was routine. Poon Lim structured every single day. By rigorously pacing his water intake, managing his panic, he prevented the severe cortisol spikes and acute dehydration that trigger renal failure. He preserved his physiology by preserving his dignity. Mental discipline is the medical and key factor. And in survival medicine, it is the difference between walking and being carried off. Second, the whale, Michael Packard, was not swallowed. He was mouthed, basically. A humpback throat is too small, just the size of a grapefruit. And Packard is a full-grown man. He was inside a mouth, not a stomach. And here's what most people miss. If the whale had dived even 50 feet deeper, the pressure alone would have crushed his ribs and lungs. He didn't survive the whale. He survived the fact that the whale surfaced within 30 seconds. That's not a Jonah story, that's a lottery ticket. Finally, the file we started with. Odysseus was gone for 10 years. Homer described him as still handsome, still strong, still the hero at the end. Using standard clinical aging markers, cumulative solar damage models, and injury reconstructive data, here's what Odysseus would have medically looked like after years at sea. Severe photoaging on every exposed surface of the skin cancers untreated across a decade, cataracts from 10 years of unfiltered UV radiation, malnutrition-induced muscle wasting on a body that would have started elite, multiple untreated fractures from shipwrecks, chronic PTSD from the combat trauma. He would not have been the hero Penelope was waiting for. He would have been unrecognizable. Homer wrote a poem. The medical reality would have killed Odysseus in year 2. The body will take you further than you think, but the mind decides how far. I'm Dr. Sam, the Reconstructor. If you're watching Nolan's Odyssey next month, remember, Homer wrote a poem. The real body count for 10 years at sea is measured in every muscle, every kidney, every tooth. Your face is the one thing you cannot undo, and your body's not far behind.